So I want to show you a couple of things that you can do with this Solarez and kind of go through the process of how you want to cure it. As we talked about in the introduction to Solarez video, when you're curing this, you don't want to just get your light and fry it. You will speed cook that, which has some very negative effects. And I'll show you a demonstration on that when we get to the end of our first demonstration, which is making eyes like this. And all you need for this is some heavy monofilament. I am using 50-pound monofilament. And I'm just going to take a lighter and just tap the end of that to create a bubble. So the way I do this, it's real easy. When I first started building these, what I would do is shoot the resin out of the tube onto the eye, but I found a easier way to do it, and that's to use one of these little solo cups. You probably pick one of these up at your local fly shop if you don't have them already when you go in to buy flies. Just take a little bit of the resin. This is thick, hard, so it's going to take a minute for it to work its way down there. Come on. There we go. Now I'm just squeezing a little into this container. See that, all right? Now I'm going to take this monofilament that I burned the tip on, and all you have to do is dip it in there. And when you pull it out, it's going to string. Just let that string break, and you can see because of the viscosity, it just bubbles right up. Now, we don't want to fry that. If I get in here and I hit that close like that, I don't know if you could see it on the video, but there was a little puff of smoke. Now what I've done is compromise that eye. It's going to be more brittle than it should be. It could yellow over time, which won't be as important for us for an eye like this because we're going to color it. But if you're putting that on the back of a nymph, or even if you're building eyes on something large like this, that's going to compromise that resin. So what you want to do is just take a little more time, and it doesn't take that much more time, but the end product, I'm sorry, I think I hit that with my light a little bit because I had it underneath where I shot the beam for a second. So you can see again that just kind of bubbled right up on there. Hit it from a distance and spin it a little bit. And then let it cool. You can see that it's not completely cured. I'll get that off of my vise. But it holds its shape. Now I'm going to hit it again a little bit closer. I'm about 4 inches away. Now I can turn it up and it'll hold its shape, and I just cook it. So what I've done is kept from getting that resin too hot all at once. And the other feature that you get with this Solarez lamp is that you get this on for a second, off for a second. That is another good way to cure this without speed cooking it and compromising the resin. So there's a couple things I wanted to show you about these eyes. First, I want to use the blackout eye like you saw in that opening of the video. I'm using Solarez Bone Dry Black, and you can see it's black, but it is not opaque. And the reason for that is if the light cannot penetrate the resin, it will not cure it. And I'm going to hit it out here from a distance, get both sides, but I'm not cooking it too much. Just a little bit. Stop for a few seconds, hit it again, spin it around, and this time I'm taking a little bit more time. Let it rest one more time, and then I'm going to come in here and just irradiate the heck out of it. So to demonstrate the importance of taking your time, I'm going to try to get this to do this. It usually does it at the most inopportune moment when I'm in a hurry trying to get these things ready to tie a shrimp or a crab. But I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to hit it real hard. like right up on there. And there you go. I don't know if you could see that, and I think you can now. You see how that changed its shape? Right here, that resin broke and it bubbled out. Let me turn it. I hope you can see that. What happened was the shell that was created instantly when I hit it with the light hardens and then shrinks, and then it pushes the liquid resin out. And that's just a quick little demonstration on how speed cooking that is not optimum. Now, even if that happens, I can save this by just putting a little dab on that side, letting it roll down there, and cure it properly. And now my eye is round again. Now, if you want to get a colored eye, if black is not your thing, then you can use these fly tie resins in different colors. One of my favorite is a rusty orange, which matches one of the EP, Enrico Puglisi crab eyes. And I use fluorescent orange, just a quick coat of that. Slap that on there. Again, we don't want to speed cook it. I'm just going to hit it a little bit from a distance, let it rest, hit it again, let it rest. Just takes a couple of seconds for that heat to dissipate in a thin coat like this, and then get in there and cure it. Now, when you're layering, you don't want to cure that 100% because you won't get as good adhesion as you will if you leave it partially cured, and that's why I didn't hit that for as long as I will with the top layer, which is brown. And you can see these colors, like I said, they're transparent, and they have to be transparent in order for the light to penetrate. Just remember, if the light cannot penetrate it, it can't be cured. Now, to finish these eyes out, you can do one of two things. You can use a little lacquer head cement, which takes longer to dry, or you can take your Solarez Bone Dry or Bone Dry Plus, put a drop on there, spin it so that it is even, and then cure it out. Okay, now just a couple little tips about using the Solarez thin formula. Because it is thin, it flows really well. You'll see how quickly that came out of the bottle, and there's only just a little bit left in that bottle. So this little chironomid right here, I like to build up the thorax, because when it's in the water, it just helps that those wing buds to glow, and it also helps to build up the bulk. Now, if I put that on there and I just let it sit, you see how it bubbles towards the bottom? But I don't really want it to do that. I want it to be even. So after I've let it sit, I can just turn it around and it's just going to flow around. If you're doing something that's got a completely round surface that you want to achieve, once you apply that, just spin your vise. That's another reason to have a nice rotary vise, or at least a rotary feature on your vise. Once you've got that resin where you want it, hit it from a distance, just for a long second. Let it sit for a few seconds, hit it from a distance. And because I'm rotating it, I'm not worried about just one quick second. I'm not worried about overcooking it. I'm going to let it rest for a few seconds again. And then I'm going to move in and irradiate it until it's completely cured. Now, when you're layering Solarez, there are a couple things that you want to know. Number one, for building something like this, like the head on this fly, where it's really, really thick, you want to do it in layers. You don't want to build all of the bulk on that in one shot. And I want to show you real quick with one that I've got prepared here how I go about doing this. Now for me, my absolute favorite resin for building bulk is something that you won't even find even on their website in the fly tying section, but this is called doming resin, and this is a flex and hard formula combined, and it allows you to build up a lot of bulk. Now you can use any of these other resins. If I'm using one of the just straight hard resins, I like the thick or the medium viscosity. But you want to use your little nozzle, and I'm going to fill this just about halfway, but I'm pushing it down in there. Don't want to overfill it. And then get in here with your bodkin and work that into any cracks, because I've found after building about 200 dozen of these things with the big heads on them, if you get an air bubble in there, it compromises that, and you're much more likely to have that resin pop out of there because it hasn't adhered completely. So when I'm building something like this, I do that one side and start the initial cure, turn it over. Again, I'm only filling it about halfway. I want to make sure that I'm working it down into all the cracks, get rid of all the air bubbles. Give it just a little bit of time to sink down in there, and then hit it. Now by the time I've done that one, I can flip this one over, and I'm going to radiate it with the cycling light and get 4 to 5 light cycles out of it. And when you're layering this, you do not want to cure your resins completely because they don't adhere as well. Normally, to finish this off, I would come right in here with my light and hit it for about 35 seconds, which we're going to do right at the end. But right now, I'm up about 4 inches away from it, 4 to 6 inches, and I'm just going to give it about 4 to 5 seconds. Flip that over. Do the same thing on the bottom side. Again, I don't want to completely cure this. I want there to be a tacky surface, so when I come back in here and build this second layer and finish that out, and I want it to dome up, but I still want it to flow into every little crevice, and that's where this doming resin just really shines, because it does exactly what I want. It flows easily and it builds up bulk. Again, I hit that top side just a little bit, and what that does is it builds an outer shell on it and keeps the resin from flowing, holds it exactly where I want. And then I'm going to go through the cycle again. And with this light, you go from the steady beam to the alternating beam. And on this one, on this cycle, I'm going to do this twice. I'm going to do 4 to 5 light cycles with this on each side. And then I'm going to flip it back around and do another 4 to 5 on either side. And this is just a sequence that I have found that is optimal, again, after tying several hundred dozen of these things with these big heads on them. I've had the best luck with those eyes holding up and not getting knocked off by fish by doing this. So after the 2 alternating cycles, I'm still about 4 to 6 inches away. I'm going to give that 10 to 15 seconds on the top side. And then I'm going to flip it over and give it 10 to 15 seconds on the bottom side. And optimally, I set these up in a rack with a bunch of display clips, and I just take them outside, put them in the sunlight, and let the sunlight finish it off. Then we'll take a little bit, and I'm going to kind of rush this a little bit for the demonstration and time purposes. I'm just going to take this and coat it with bone dry. And what that does, these epoxy eyes are a little soft and they can scratch. and it creates a bond not only on the surface of the epoxy eye, but between the bulk of the head and the epoxy eye. And you can see this is starting to create a little drip here. And with the bone dry, it's really important that you don't just let it hang before you irradiate it. Rotate it, that way it flows evenly all around the head, and then just hit it. I'm about 8 to 9 inches away from that. I don't want to cook it too fast. I'm going to let it rest. Now I'm going to hit it again, and I'm rotating it around there. Again, I'm still about 8 to 10 inches away. Let that rest for a few seconds. And now I'm just going to cook it. I've come in here at about 4 inches. I'm going to do a couple of rotations. And because all of this resin is clear, there's no color or pigment in any of it, no matter how many layers I put on there, the light can still penetrate it. So I can partially cure it as I go through each step and still either hold my light on it to finish the curing, or take it outside and put it in direct sunlight and let it finish curing like that. Optimally, you want to have about 10 to 15 minutes of direct sunlight or your UV light to cure something of this bulk completely. So follow that procedure. You'll get very durable heads. They won't yellow over time, and they won't craze, won't crack, and you'll be able to catch a ton of fish on these things.